manyfold. And I think part of the problem with a comment like this is there are a multitude of reasons why a particular directive may not actually be deleting or may not be pulling through correctly. And those issues can run the gamut from the employer just actually, to be blunt, screwed it up and actually had the wrong contact details and the wrong coding. They used the wrong directive form. They didn't click the right button, to a SARS issue. And the SARS issues can run the gamut from the actual particular directive got corrupted to the screen didn't talk properly to the other system, and I'm not a techie. Well, so I can't pretend that I'm familiar with the inner workings of, but that there's something went funky within the e-filing system from a processing point of view, all right? And it is the last option is that also then something is captured incorrectly in the IT12, right? So, sorry, on the RP5. So there are also procedurally, and this is something which I'm yet to understand exactly why they did it this way, but again, I don't write SARS's admin books, I can just tell you what it is. SARS actually has a different process for how you cancel directives dependent on whether this is a severance benefit or a lump sum. So in other words, is this an employer paid lump sum or a fund paid lump sum? Then we have to go and look at this on this guide, and what it says in there is that effectively you can put through the request for cancellation, but then they're actually going to have, SARS is actually going to have to approve the cancellation and review the cancellation before they'll issue it, which in part, from what I can gather and from what I've understood from varying parties, is because of the cumulative basis for how the retirement and the severance tables work. So it makes sense that if I've submitted a severance benefit request and then cancel it a couple of months later, that my cancellation may have an impact on another directive which was issued subsequently, and they need to go and get that fixed. Okay. If, however, it's an employer directive, then you should be able to delete them on your side as long as the RP5s haven't been issued, MP501s haven't been issued, and yeah. So from that point of view, it's absolutely possible. Okay. So please just also, I'm going to just make the general point of saying, ensure that you actually have the correct period involved, or the correct process and the correct directive involved. And without actually having more information than that, I can't really give you a more detailed answer on why or what it worked or didn't work. But I'm also not seeing anything specifically in the chat box which is dealing with that, unless there's any other comments from anyone in the chat box who's had a different perspective with the directives. The other thing as well is that also, just to please bear in mind, SARS did change the directive process during the course of 2022. So it could also very easily be that you might have an issue where the directive was issued before the change and cancelled after, which may have led to an e-filing issue, right? In which case it needs to be escalated to the e-filing team. So the first step, actually, I would suggest in a situation like that is actually for the employer to make an appointment with a tax practitioner and go and say, okay, which of the problems is it? Let's identify the problem, and then you can get to the solution, right? Not strictly related to the question, but I'll take it. What table must be applied for individuals for a lump sum paid out in the case of death? The person is 42. Please bear in mind, if you've died, then in terms of the severance benefit definition, you qualify as having an extreme case of ill health. So you would have a severance benefit, so you would go to the severance benefit tables if this is being paid out from the employer. Please bear in mind, though, that this is only for lump sums which are paid as a result of your loss of employment. So something like your leave payout is not actually so the leave payout is not actually a compensation for loss of office. That's a contractual obligation which was triggered from the work you did before. So leave pay is not part of your severance benefit, but any other like lump sum payouts or items that you would pay related to the employee would then qualify. Okay. I got feedback from the person who sent me the email, so thank you. And the feedback from the person who sent the directive question was to go and say, they went to SARS, did exactly as suggested, went to the tax practitioner, got the directive cancelled, but the cancellation was only was only processed through the e-filing system once the RP5s and EMP 501s were issued. Okay, so it took a little bit of time for that to then wash out through the system. Okay. And if your employer is a government institution, I can say good luck. I personally had a cousin who worked for, who was a teacher, and she ended up having an error where, for whatever reason, for long story short, her pension payout got recorded in 1 year of assessment and in another year of assessment. So she got double taxed. It was quite a mess to try and get it fixed, but that's where we are. Just to also be aware, one of the items that is on the Annexure C submissions, and it's come through from most of the RCBs, is putting in more protections for the employee where the employer doesn't actually do what they should. Because there is really a problem in the space of employees where we kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because if something's gone wrong on a directive or an IT or an RP5 or something like that, SARS tells us they can't fix anything without the employer fixing it. And the employer tells us, well, go tell SARS to change it. And if your employer tells you to get knotted, especially if you still need them for your job, it's not like you can go kick up too much of a fuss. So there's definitely a trend, or I don't know, trend's the wrong word, a push for more accountability for the employers in the PAYE provisions. Okay.